Hello, hello. We are live from the Hive with Chris Maute tonight, talking about just brain stuff. I had mentioned we'd been talking in Discord about my interest in mass hysteria because it comes up in a lot of the topics I talk about with Cryptic Corners. So he said, "Heck yeah, I'd love to come on and talk about that." So here
Anything
we are.
psychology.
Yeah,
I'm the biggest nerd. I'm the biggest cheerleader for psychology. Just point me in a direction and let me go.
yeah. So the uh, the topic also it does have some some insect like origins. So I did you know that, Chris?
I didn't necessarily know that, but hive mentality, right? Mass hysteria is a hive mentality.
Yes.
So I can
And
easily
there's
see
a
the parallels.
yeah, there's a and that's the term that for most of the time that this condition's been a condition that they would identify that as mass hysteria. And now hysteria is not really a condition anymore or something that we refer to. I think the proper vernacular is mass psychogenic illness. Um,
Mass psychogenic illness, which almost always kind of reduces when it gets down to the individual as a conversion disorder, or usually conversion disorder is a consequence or a beginning trait. Like one individual will have an illness or a physical symptom or an idea or a hysterical catastrophic event that usually is also very personality based. These are usually people who are extroverted, that score high, I should say, on extroversion and neuroticism. And it's convincing in a group of people who are confused, looking for cues to understand what's going on and seeing chaos to kind of get swept up in, okay, this is my reality now, right? The story that I tell about how quickly our brains accept new realities is my virtual reality demo story at Best Buy. I'm deathly afraid of heights. And I went to go try out the Oculus VRs. And I figured I'd do the rock climbing one with the assumption that you started at the bottom of the rock and climbed up because I'm afraid of heights. I want to start at the bottom, right? No. You put the goggles on and they start you up 3 miles over off the ground on a rickety bridge. My brain instantly accepted that as a reality, and I started flop sweating, like the kind of sweat that beads on your skin because it just comes out so fast. The dude at Best Buy, I can hear him, of course, right, saying, "You really are afraid of heights." My brain, well, first I want to punch him right through a wall because I'm freaking out. But like my brain still accepted that I was in danger even though seconds before I was in a Best Buy. And the dude from the Best Buy was breaking the fourth wall by talking to me. My brain was still like, hold on for your life, dude.
was there a rail or something you were clinging to?
Yeah. I mean, and I must have looked hilarious, right? Just like being disoriented. All of that to say how quickly our minds accept certain realities. And in an environment of chaos, where there's not a lot of very stable cues that you can plant your perceptions in, you might get swept up in a different version of what could have happened, but not really what happened. And you might even actually show symptoms of what you thought was going to happen. But that all makes sense when you understand consciousness and perception. But maybe we'll get a little into that later.
Yeah, the contagion aspect of it is also because I'm always skeptical of
That was a fantastic word. Skeptical.
yeah. That
Let's
means
make that a
I'm
bumper
willing to be
sticker.
skeptical about anything, right? About anything if you give me the chance. I'm
Mhm.
skeptical. So the social
The cult
contagion nature of it, I'm always skeptical of anything that's demonstrated as a social contagion. I always kind of, but I guess one of the ones that is most frequently
Why?
studied.
Well, I want to ask why. I want to press the pause button. So why are you
Yes,
skeptical when you hear about social contagion? because
Because
I'm comfortable using social contagion as a legitimate variable and talking about some of
Mhm.
my research. So I'm curious to
Yeah.
hear what you have to
Oh
say.
yeah, for sure. I guess that maybe I feel like every time that I've ever looked into the research done into a social contagion, and given they're always like people group seeing UFOs or things like that. Um, I feel like once you get down into the weeds of it, the people that are actually affected by it directly just gets smaller and smaller, and it becomes more and more about a select, just a few individuals that stimulated that. But the people who were on the edges of it just were kind of, I don't know, uh not as involved as they're originally portrayed. uh I think about what's it called, Our Lady Fatima, uh the Miracle of the Sun, uh
Okay.
Spain. It was 1917. uh, Thousands of people did show up to see the Miracle of the Sun. However, if you look in the media of the day, if you look into even the case studies about it, the number of people that were actually there are really inconsistent. So I think that these historical mass hysteria events that are documented really get weeded down. And in the case of the Miracle of the Sun, it gets actually weeded down to just one little girl telling stories about seeing the Virgin Mary, and
Yeah.
then some
And then that's
kind
all
of,
it takes for some person
yeah.
to say out loud, "What? You saw the Virgin Mary in
Mhm.
the sun?" And for another person to overhear them saying they saw the Virgin Mary in the sun. Another person to say, "Didn't you see the Virgin Mary in the sun?" Because they did. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it's like, "Of course I saw the Virgin Mary in the sun. You saw it too?" "Yeah, I saw it." Next thing
Mhm.
you know, the
Yeah.
exponential effect of all of that,
Right.
right?
And then when you get down to interviewing the people, when you look at the interviews with the people who saw the phenomena, it's so inconsistent about what happened, what they saw, how
Mhm.
it portrayed itself, because it seems like a lot of these people were just were not wanting to be the person who didn't see something. What does that mean about me if I wasn't able to see the Virgin Mary? I pilgrimaged here hundreds of miles. What does that say about me that I wasn't able to see anything? Of course, I saw something. So it cements itself in their brains that they saw something, right? But when it comes down to like the
And
bottom
also the
line
way
of
that
it,
memory works, right? If they believed that they saw it and in talking to their friends afterwards kept retelling the story and embellishing it and making it more solidified that that the story they're telling is about a thing that did happen, it's just it's intoxicating. But it's really how we perceive. So let me just take a step back. So you gave me a great answer as to why you find social contagion stories fishy, right?
Mhm.
um, and that was a good example because there's so many non-solid things that are going on. There's so many things going on that you can't sink your teeth into. Like you said, if you try to break it down like a structuralist, you can't talk to each individual and build a structure that makes sense because everyone's telling a different story, right? And like I said, the way that our perception is, we're picking up on very subtle cues. Those subtle cues could be deceptive, and that can inform our perceptions. Also, our memories. Some people think that memory is like a recording or a file that we file away, or document that we file away. And when we want to retrieve it, we go back to that timestamp or we go back to that document in its original pristine form. That's not how memory works, right? The analogy, I just got done talking about this in class. I taught this on Monday. Memory is less like making the perfect sugar cookie and storing it away. And every time you want to have that memory or sugar cookie, you go back to that original perfect sugar cookie. What actually happens is your brain always has the ingredients for sugar cookies available, so that when you want one, it makes a new one from scratch every time. And just like making sugar cookies, even if you follow the recipe exactly, the humidity and temperature of the kitchen might be differently, making those sugar cookies a little different. Again, using the sugar cookie memory analogy, every time you construct your your memory, it might be slightly changed, and those slight changes might stay as a trace of how you remember it, even if it's an incorrect embellishment that you did just to make it more an entertaining story. So because we construct our memories like this, because our perceptions are just controlled hallucinations, we're more impressionable than we think. And I think that's the secret sauce of psychology, right? And it's frustrating because nobody likes to be told what they're thinking or how they're thinking because we think we're in control of it. But the secret of psychology is there's so many factors wagging the dog by the tail that it's embarrassing and humbling that let me take another step back. When we're talking about people who are victim of mass psychogenic illness, we're not talking about them. We're talking about us. If you, Bree, if I were in a crowd where one of these weird events were happening, I would like to think that we would have the wherewithal to press the pause button and see what's going on. But I'm a human, right? If I'm with my kids, if I'm with my wife, all of a sudden, like, I'm way more vigilant about things, and I might have my amygdala hijacked by somebody saying something's important that's not, and the confusion ensues. Like, I can't claim that because I know this psychology that I would do any better in those situations. Again,
this can actually be demonstrated pretty readily by, smelling gas. For instance, someone says they smell gas, it can really become a contagion that everybody thinks they smell gas, but they're really, and you're a smell guy. Is that a good example for you?
That's a perfect example because there is something called sick building syndrome that could be considered part of the mass psychogenic illness. It is the idea that somebody smells something funny and starts getting a symptom, and it is within the periphery of other people that are like, oh yeah, I smell that too. And that same thing that we talked about, it happens in an enclosed space, and it's called sick building syndrome. And it's just as unsatisfying. It pretty much comes down to somebody having symptoms that can't be explained by anything else, right? When there are chemical analyses done, there's nothing different about the air. There was nothing unusual happening in any of the local odor emanating, industries. So yeah, it's one of these and they pop up all over the place. Like, as homework for this, I looked up a couple of videos on mass psychogenic illness, and there are just like if you were to look it up, there are some relatively recent cases of it where people claimed to have symptoms where they were going numb, they were paralyzed, horrible things were happening, they smelled something, people claim that they did too, and then days later it just turned out to be a big nothing burger. Like you said, when individuals were interviewed, the interviews were really nothing, and the people who, like, when they got down to like patient zero, it was usually started by a group of people that were young or scored high on these personality traits, or it was a conversion illness or an episode of that. So like I said, it's unsatisfying. You would think that these would be like, if enough of them happened and there was a pattern to them, maybe there's like this layer of something that's happening that we could tap into, but it's not even that fun.
So can I real quick to Godspeed? Technically, you are a hallucination. I mean, you are what other people's brains build with a series of electronic and chemical responses from your eyes into your.
Oh, it's even deeper than that. We predict and simulate our realities, and we only interact with external reality when our predictions are wrong. So prediction error is the only moment we're making contact with reality. If my predictions are correct, I'm living in a simulation that I've created, and there's no reason for me to actually interact with reality because everything has met my expectation perfectly.
Your brain only needs to show you a world that's you're capable of interacting with. So anything that we don't need for our interaction, and that's why like certain insects and certain birds see in different spectrums of light than we do, because we don't need to see in those spectrums of light to do what we do, but they do because they pollinate or whatever, and they need to guide to the flowers. So there's a whole world of color and light that we cannot see. Actually, there's two worlds, one on either end of the rainbow, but we can't see in either of them. But there's animals that can see in both. That doesn't mean that those are less real. that means that the world that you are constructing with your sensory perception doesn't necessarily comport with what all is out there in the real world.
And
There's
that's a
things we
good
can't
point.
smell, things we can't
Exactly.
taste.
I mean, if you want to go like Drosophila, I mean, we can go nuts with that. I mean, the fact that they can see things that we can't, the fact that they have odor receptors on their feet and on their antenna, and like they just experience the world completely differently than we do because they've adapted evolutionarily to get from the environment what they need to survive. We are all just meat sacks for the selfish gene. That includes us, humans. We have brains. Isn't that great? Here's a disassembled brain right here that I tried to reassemble right before this, but didn't. Anyway, maybe my brain's broken too. All of that to say, our brain's not for thinking, right? And that's the deception. Our brain is not for thinking. We think with it and we feel with our brain too, but it's not for feeling either. Our brain is for body budgeting to make sure that we survive. It is the headquarters to these systems that are in us that help us survive. Why? To pass on our genes. That's from a biological perspective. That is the only reason why we even have a brain. And us thinking that, oh, well, we're in control of our thoughts and our emotions and we can figure this shit out is a joke. It is mental masturbation. It is navel gazing. And it is audacious for humans to think that we are in more control of things than we are. We have a limited capacity to access external reality. Vision is a mere sliver of the bandwidth of the electromagnetic light. Hearing is a sliver of the bandwidth of pressure waves. We can only detect a sliver of the chemicals that we are swimming in every day. And even of the ones that we can perceive, we only pay attention to a sliver of those. We are not in
certain
direct
qualities
contact
about
with
them, right?
external reality. Say that again?
Only certain qualities about them, right?
Exactly.
That we pay attention to.
And that changes per day, per hour, per minute, depending on the context and what your goals are. So with all of that said, for people that think that our brains are accurate instruments to perceive the outside world, events like mass psychogenic illness demonstrate otherwise. We are prone to be hacked because we're not meant for accuracy. We are reliably and predictably irrational in ways that little glitches in the environment, predictable, reliable glitches in the environment, produce reliable and predictable results that are irrational, that just don't make sense. When a group of people get together, it's almost like that's its own organism. The behavior of a population has its own group dynamics that you can't really account for in any individual within that population.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's using the sensory perception stuff is a good analog for what we're talking about with the social cues that we experience from the people around us. So why you can't, if you run around or if you come running down the road, you're going to change the whole biological responses of everybody standing there in presence. If you come barreling down the road, they're gonna react. We are a social species. We respond to what those around us are doing and how they're acting. So when someone's running, maybe you want to run too. Maybe you turn and look. Maybe you poise yourself for what may be coming down the way. You look both ways to see what's going on. You react. Your whole state of being changes. The way you perceive the world around you changes too. You're going to notice things about the environment that you're in that you wouldn't have noticed before, and you're going to have that snapshot of that in your mind more clearer than before and after that happened. Maybe it was just somebody on a jog who was running by and it only lasted a split second, but the way you perceive the world around you and the things you notice about what's going on, completely different than what you do when you're just going through your motions.
Unbeknownst to us, our brains are sending signals and receiving signals from other brains. Like, it is impossible for us to be in the presence of another human without it affecting our body budget, remembering that our brain is for body budgeting, which is just another way of saying, like, it figures out everything that we need to reach homeostasis to stay alive, right? Our body budget affects other people. Other people's body, other people affect our body budget. So it's always this game of our brain is perpetually aware of things in the environment, right? It's not nature or nurture. It's nature and nurture, or the nature of nurture. However you want to look at it, it is not this crazy dichotomy. It's you can't get away from both of them being so entwined.
Always has been, Godseed. Always has been.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
That's why it feels good.
Right. Yeah, that's why it feels good. So that you do it. So that you, because the ones who it didn't feel good for, didn't do it and didn't produce offspring. That's evolution and how that works. But
it's adaptation.
Yeah. Yes. The way that we I'm loving this conversation. It's gone down a lot of the perception route more so than I thought. I thought maybe we were gonna focus more
I'm
on
a
the
sucker for that stuff.
Yeah, I was, and I didn't on like the social implications, but absolutely the sensory stuff is what is much more interesting to me. So,
well, you can't get away, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the nature of nurture. Even though we're talking about the biology of psychology, you know, one of my bumper stickers for classes, you know, all psychology, everything psychological is biological.
Right.
How the so starting with the individual, you can talk about how individuals affect, you know, cumulatively the groups that they become, or how groups can affect individuals, right? Because our behavior is different when we're in a group versus when it's not. And I think that laying down these perceptual foundation components help make sense out of altruistic behavior, reciprocity, social loafing, right? The bystander effect, like all of these things that happen in society are a give and take of how our body budgets are affecting each other, right? We want to survive. That kind of involves in society in today's day and age, in this stage of evolution, pair coupling, bonding, having sex, procreating, right? So there has to be love. Right now, we are in a stage of where relationships are actually entrenched in romantic love. This wasn't always the case. It wasn't always the case that you married people that you loved. In the past, it was you married people you had to, or you just didn't marry, right? Like hunter-gatherer societies, it was a different ball of wax altogether, right? As soon as things settled down for agriculture, the idea of permanence and territory and bartering kind of changed.
Once we started accumulating wealth, basically, yeah.
Yeah, it changed relationships. And I'm specifically talking about intimate relationships. Mm-hmm. And it was through the Middle Ages when knights started taking on this idea of chivalry. Because before the idea of the chivalrous knight, knights were killers. Like they were the people that you were afraid of when they were coming down the village, you know? This idea that brawn ought to be balanced with passion and civility, that maybe you should be a gentleman, right? Like, wait, what's that? A Sith in the street and the Jedi in the sheets, like just like the idea that you are a gentleman who knows all the decorum and rules in public, but you are deadly. You know, if somebody should, you know, cross you, you can just lay them out in one fell swoop. That chivalry thing with knights kind of started changing relationships too. And also over time, the idea that you should love the person that you marry before you marry them, which seems obvious to us now. That wasn't always the case. Yeah. I'm bringing the marriage thing up just as a basic example of how learning about the brain and how we pick up perception and cues can affect pair bonding as it relates right now. And then even beyond that, just how you get along with people and friends. Now, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that I'm the leader of a cult that has a Discord server that I specifically use for the most selfish reasons possible. Not only do I hate lemon bars, but I need social connection. And I selfishly use the internet and have set up a Discord that I mockingly call a cult so that I can maintain that connection. I need that connection. And in the presence of those Discord friends, I behave different. I behave differently. And bass playing, yes. I'm essentially just a bass player who happens to know a little bit about psychology.
Yeah. He's a brain attached to a bass.
It's just bass brain.
Yes.
That's all it is.
We actually both had our axes out earlier.
That's true. We were shredding before. I was taking lessons. Bree was showing me some riffs. Killing it.
Oh, yeah. The good old days. I love rocking out.
Yeah. I'm
speaking of the psychology aspect of this and the sensory perception, how familiar are you with the notion of infrasound?
Infrasound?
Infrasound, yes.
I'm not. Turn me on to it. What's it about?
How it affects our psychology. So, and it's rock show related too, because they did these experiments at a concert, right?
Mhm.
They would play these low frequency infrasounds under the rock music, and then they would gauge the audience's emotional reactions to it. And they found that the infrasound played under the music caused unease and stress in the participants in the crowd.
I bet.
Now, the interesting part about infrasound is that couple of things about it. First, when it comes to where it's found in nature, where these frequencies are found, they're found in the roars of big cats. So there's a biological notion there that this was evolved, this unease to those frequencies evolved in response.
This makes perfect sense. I mean, I've never heard about this, but I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, I also teach a psychology of music class. So this idea that loud, low sounds, from an evolutionary perspective, that could only be made by large, intimidating beasts, right? And just because our hearing stops at, what is it, like 20,000?
Yeah. Your brain still picks up on that stuff. Your ear still processes so that you
can sense it. You can feel, right? Because these are pressure waves. Sound is pressure waves, and pressure waves can exist in air and any material, solid material, liquid material, gaseous material. Pressure waves are pressure waves. So you can sense low frequencies that you can't hear, right? Just because your cochlea isn't sending that auditory signal doesn't mean that you're not sensing it. And why would you sense it? Well, evolutionarily speaking, that means that something so fucking big that it's rumbling things below a frequency you can detect consciously, but you can unconsciously sense, that would freak me out. I get freaked out in fucking car washes. That would freak me out.
Yeah, and they've also noted that the other interesting factor about this is places like the Stanley Hotel, where they've done paranormal investigations, has infrasound vibrations in the sub basement that vibrate through the whole hotel, especially when there is a lot of heavy snow. So over the winters, and that's the hotel that the overlook from The Shining is based on, because all the alleged winter caretakers would go berserk up in there because they were covered, the once it was covered in snow, and it was there for whatever, I don't remember that there was some kind of physics of it, but it was causing,
but it was actually generating these frequencies.
Yeah.
And are you saying that was what was accounting for the paranormal claims, you think?
That they draw correlation between that. And now if it's causation, I don't want to make that leap, but there are definitely infrasounds that are known.
You don't have to do correlation, causation in that case. I think that Occam's razor and parsimony would say that if it is objectively generating these frequencies, that explanation is much more clean and parsimonious than that there is actually a paranormal supernatural
Right,
world.
yeah, with Occam's razor, of course. Yeah, paranormal doesn't even come anywhere close to these naturalistic
But just because
explanations.
of all the hurdles of explanation that like it stops being explanatory when you can't explain when you can't justify the explanation.
Yeah, when it doesn't come back to natural physics. Once you move beyond the physical into the paraphysical, it
Yeah.
doesn't really, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the science is of supernature. Like I know what it is of nature, right? Science is
Mhm.
the best, the gold standard for finding natural answers for natural phenomena. I don't know what the process is for supernatural explanations of supernatural phenomena.
I didn't even mean for this structure, but we've actually gone through this show kind of going through each of the senses. We started off with
Vision.
vision, and then so we talked about smell with like gas and stuff. Yeah, we've
Yeah, we've
gone
gone
through
through
all the senses. Of course,
interoception, proprioception. What's next? Taste.
yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be. I think some of the mass hysteria stuff has been people reacting to certain, like, I think I saw one that was people reacting to Coca-Cola and thinking they were getting, and it's this that's the social contagion part of it too, thinking they were getting sick with off of drinking it because the other individuals in the case study were drinking it too. That
Well,
was, when
in
was
the
that?
sick building syndrome, it frequently has to do with odor. So smell and
Mm.
taste are the chemical senses. So we can kind of put them in the same bucket. Excuse me. And the thing with the chemical senses is we have a negativity bias, right? In general, for good reason, right? That's why bitter denotes disgust. And, you know, the disgust face is pretty much an attempt to remove things that have been ingested that can be potentially dangerous. What was I saying? Oh, so when somebody smells something that's unfamiliar, they may just put it in because it's unfamiliar and maybe not a good smell. They may put it in the bucket of dangerous. And in the wrong hands, smelling something that's unfamiliar and not good and thinking that it's dangerous could easily cause a ripple effect around the people around them, right?
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, you get that your brain responds to this. That's why people are afraid of like spiders and snakes, right? They're as tetrapods with posable thumbs. They're very unfamiliar to us, very alien from us. And I think there's probably some epigenetic drivers there that say, hey, the, the 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 members of our species ancestors that touched these things didn't survive. So
mhm.
yeah, but that gets into an area of psychology. I don't even know if we're ready to discuss like epigenetic drivers of psychological states. You know, it's
Well, that would be the epigenetics as applied to biological endpoints is a little bit easier to demonstrate. Epigenetic um, drivers for psychological endpoints is a little bit different unless you were to use an example like schizophrenia, right? Or what is it?
what
I
about
recently
manic pregnancy?
manic pregnancy. I'm not familiar with that. I have to be honest.
Yeah, where a woman
Look it up.
gets it in her brain is convinced that she's pregnant, so her body starts to respond with pregnancy effects, swollen stomach, swollen breast. That the body starts to react and actually have a physical response to uh this. I guess that's not epigenetic. Well, the way your body responds to pregnancy is epigenetic. So yes, it would be. Um so
But that sounds less epigenetic. So, and because I'm unfamiliar with this, I'm just
okay.
going off of my instinct here, and I could be wrong, but it sounds more like a placebo kind of effect, right? Which is not quite epigenetic. So, for a classic, if you want to use, so let's quick use schizophrenia. Let me
Okay,
use
go ahead.
schizophrenia just to explain how I would understand epigenetics working with a psychological, a way of thinking kind of
Okay.
disorder. So schizophrenia you can be born with the polygenetic propensity for it, which just means that in your DNA, you have enough of the markers that it is, because in behavioral genetics, when we're talking about psychological abnormalities or diagnoses, there's a rule of thumb that pretty much says everything abnormal is normal. The things that people who are diagnosed, the things that they have in their genes, are the same things that we have in our genes. They just have a few more of them that pushes them towards having these disorders, right? So it's not like it's a difference of kind. It's literally a difference of degree. So what makes them abnormal is just their quantity of these normal things that normal people have. Normal. So if you had a polygenetic score, that would put you in the risk of getting schizophrenia. And here's also an example of, just because you have an inheritable predisposition for it doesn't make it predetermined that you're going to have it. If you have that genetic predisposition for it, your polygenetic score is such that you're prone to it. You can have no events. You could be raised in the most stable house with no, your parents are alive and your grandparents and your pets. There's like no super traumatic events that happen during the window of opportunity, which is like 16 to 20. And you go the rest of your life without having schizophrenia. There is nothing about your environment that allowed a gene that you have to express. Now, if you have that gene and you're in an environment that is chaotic, or you suffer a major traumatic blow, just a life event, that environmental event can change whether or not that gene expresses, right? Again, epigenetics isn't about the environment creating new genes. It's about the environment allowing certain genes that you already have to express or not. So for me, that would be a pretty classic example of epigenetics. The environment, you always have the gene, and this isn't everybody, but for everyone who has the polygenetic score, and environment dictates whether that gene expresses or not, right? And if it does express and that person procreates, there's a higher propensity of having it expressed in their offspring, right? So it literally changes downstream genetic effects of procreation should it be expressed. And the best example of this is, there's a researcher who was doing research on psychoticism, and he was doing brain scans of these people for courts, because when people claim insanity, they could be maligning, they could be faking. And so there is a very specific test, and there's a specific area of the brain that lights up under certain circumstances that, pretty much is not quite a litmus test, but is what is considered. So the researcher, in doing the research, put himself in the scanner and realized that his brain lights up in all the areas that psychotics do. Oh. And so he got all the tests, and then he realized that he scored higher than anyone he tested, but he was raised in such a loving, he's not psychotic, right? He has his shit together. He's running research studies on people who are psychotic. And it was by doing that, kismet being what it is, that he found that he has the warrior gene. He has the kind of brain that, scores very high on psychoticism.
Yeah. So, that's and that's interesting. That's how the environment can trigger gene expression. Yeah.
Yes. And that is epigenetics. Mm-hmm. The biological example would be like, if you're smoking while you're pregnant, you could change the genes of, you can change obesity genes in the child, and that child can grow to express those obesity genes and pass those obesity genes onto their child. So you can see how the environment, the placental environment from a smoking mother, can affect 2 generations.
Yeah, we have a GER in the side chat. I just wanted to point this out in case anybody feels like they're unsafe or need any kind of protection. There is a GER in the side chat.
It's true.
Be careful.
It's true.
All right.
He's doing a stream earlier, GER. You
Yeah.
got to watch out for the GER.
Yeah, I was not able to watch because I was still at work. GER keeps streaming while I'm at work, and I'm not sure why. I think that they're afraid I'm going to come in there and put my foot down. So with I did want to share this with you because I was doing the research about mass hysteria, as it was called in those days. And the earliest examples that they find are dancing hysteria, like people responding to what they thought was what they thought was a spider bite, a tarantula bite, and that's where you get the dance tarantula in Southern Europe. But that was one of the earliest examples of people responding to mass hysteria, that you got bit by the spider and it would cause you to dance, and it was contagious to the people you would dance around. Tyrannitism. That's the word I was looking for.
I love
Yeah.
that. I wished I was surrounded by people who just dance that made
Yeah.
me break out spontaneously to dance. Well, here's the thing that I want to. Here's why I think contagion is a fun variable, because of things like emotional contagion. I'm convinced that emotions are contagious, right? You can be surrounded by people who are laughing hysterical and not be in a particularly good mood, and it's really hard not to start laughing. You know what I mean? Like, just watch a video of somebody laughing at another video, and it's just hard not to laugh, right? And seeing somebody who's sad, it is. I mean, assuming you are a human being. So I guess this rules out Titan Uranus. You need to be a human being to feel this empathy and compassion, such that when you see somebody sad, you feel sad. When you see somebody laughing, you feel happy, right? And I think that that's a good thing. I think that that is a hack. That is that is a human social psychology hack.
Yeah, and we can see it in our closest relatives too, that they respond to the expressions that each other make. With apes, apes are very expressive, and they respond maybe more so than we do to expressive communication, and relate how they communicate with one another, and relate the social contagion, I guess, because they'll all
oh yeah, well,
behave
looking
accordingly.
at chimpanzees and bonobos, we get a really good idea of what kind of social animal we are, because they have a lot of the first Pentecostals. I like it. Oh, you made me lose my train of thought.
We were talking about sorry, yeah, I just saw that. That is one of the groups that came to mind when I started thinking about people responding this way, and having the contagion effect, as people speaking in tongues in Pentecostal churches.
Oh yeah, I definitely think that the whole Pentecostalism thing, the whole baptized by fire, evangelical thing, is like a hypnotic state, and it is social contagion, right? Because if you can work yourself up into that trance state, then you're just prone to things. And then, of course, because of the context, right, these weird, ambiguous things that are going on, how do I attribute it? Oh, the Lord, Lord's speaking through me, right? Even though, like, you couldn't determine what the hell it is. And
yeah, that's one of the things that makes me, like I said, I'm always look at accounts of social contagion, kind of like, what's really going on here, because they all have they all seem to have the aspects of, like, at the point in time you're in a group, or in a situation where you're all supposed to act accordingly. You're all supposed to be. They seem to always happen in situations like that, where everybody in the
yeah,
group
but
is
Bree,
there
I
with
want you
the
to
same.
I want you to think about how important their beliefs are to them, because of the fact that they feel them that way, right? So I want to take a quick psychology step back and say, our consciousness, the way that we are conscious, is embodied. Our consciousness has everything to do with the fact that we have a body that our brain is perpetually appraising the internal and external states of. It is just how we are. That being said, knowledge is embodied. If we experience something over and over again, attributing it to X, that X exists as a real thing, means something to those people in a way that if you haven't felt it, it doesn't. Does that sound familiar? Right? Like if we're going to turn
Yeah.
to religion, that's the whole fucking experience. That's why when I talk to religious people and they're like, what could change your mind? The only answer that makes sense to me is personal revelation. You could show me a shit ton of evidence, but because I'm biased, I'm going to look at it a certain way. After personal revelation, after that embodied knowledge and understanding, if there is a God, should they want to touch me on the forehead and, grace me with their presence, well, then I can look at that same fucking evidence and see it as evidence for God, right? And because everything is psychological, the people who claim that that evidence would change their minds, I think they're full of shit. Atheists, please stop using that goddamn argument. And stop downplaying the value of personal revelation. And then, of course, Christians, stop overplaying your hand with personal revelation. It only gets you so far, right? It only gets you as far as your skin. It proves nothing beyond outside of your skin. Congratulations, you had personal revelation. I accept that you think that. You can't make claims about anyone other than you beyond that. So both sides are fucked with that kind of argument, but that's why the argument sucks. It's a psychological thing, not a philosophical thing. We're going to believe the things that we experience more than they've experienced if we haven't. But if we've both experienced it, holy fuck, that is the beginning of a new religion. Potentially.
Yeah. I don't know. When it comes to things, again, social contagions, how many people are actually pulled in and feel that they're actually experiencing that, and how many are saying that I don't want to be a person who didn't experience that and are just going through those steps. And is there any does the fact that there are both those groups of people, does it even matter? I guess.
Well, let's see. We can use online behavior as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can attest to being swept up in certain currents, right, of whatever was happening online, whether it be arguing against evidentialist apologetics, arguing against presup apologetics, or finding somebody with a shitty idea and dogpiling on them. Unfortunately, I've been a part in all of that bullshit, which is why I have the opinions I do about it. But I do have friends who understand that. So this kind of addresses what you're talking about before, like that there are people who experience it, that there are people that don't, and the factions that could kind of
Right,
create.
because I feel that the people who are going along with it and faking it, I want to say, or are going through the motions because they want to be part of that experience, are I do think they're contagious to people maybe having the real experience. I don't know. They would feed into each other is I guess my point. But go on. I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is I can only imagine one way of setting up a firewall for yourself for letting that happen. So friends that I have online, I have a buddy, Fabio Andriozzi, and he's very clever at being an online presence, but just staying outside of stuff to find the perfect balance so that it stays entertaining without him getting caught up in any of it. Like he always has it at arm's length, knowing that at any moment, crazy idea could gain momentum. I strive to be like Fabio, right? Not only in my online activity, but it's a life lesson. Fabio's a little bit older than me. He older brothers me. He big brothers me every once in a while. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes not. For me, that's one of those, he never said it out loud, but it's just observing his behavior. Like he never gets caught up in the bullshit. He always knows what's going on. And a lot of people know who he is. You know what I mean? It's just like, he's just a presence. So I have a lot to learn from my buddy Fabio. But
I know
relating that
Fabio.
oh yeah, he's so great.
I'm in the cult, so
Of course. And many more people should be in the cult. Let me just take a quick second to talk about the fact that I am a cult leader. And, it's not so much that all cults are bad. It's not so much a cult even. It's just more like a way of life. And I think that more people should be in the kind of cult that I'm trying to start, which has to do with if you want to take advantage and hack the fact that your brain is prone to social contagion and taking on the ideas of the people that you surround yourself with. I literally started a server with the hopes of surrounding myself with the people that I want to have conversations with. And literally choosing who you hang out with determines your social reality, and it builds the memories that you're going to have in the future. Silly shit.
Now,
I
before
made
we
buttons. I made buttons for my cult. Why? Because for $30, 2 years from now, I'm gonna be able to point to, oh, remember when I made those little fucking stupid buttons? That's the things that make life worth living. But instead of setting yourself up for that success, you can get caught up in the bullshit. It's a conscious decision. So that's the cult that I'm running.
yes, I was going to ask, you have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Could one of my mods drop the link in there in the side chat so that I can get it added to the video descriptions. I do want people to know where to find Chris if they're interested in more of this kind of conversations. Chris seems to just enjoy having these conversations with just about anybody.
That's the goal. The goal is to set a standard or model the behavior that I want reciprocated, right? Like if I make it known that I like having these kinds of conversations, and if people think that I'm kind of good at them, which is kind of like I'm trying to sell myself on that, then I'm hoping that more people invite me to have these kinds of conversations and that they accept my invitations to have these kinds of conversations. Admittedly, back in the day, in the old guard Google Plus days, I used to have a show, a weekly thing, more than a weekly, called Meeting of the Minds. I'm out of the game. For the purpose of my cult, I have a Sunday dinner hangout Sundays around 1-ish, early afternoon Eastern. And I literally view it as I'm the house in the neighborhood that leaves the door unlocked while I'm cooking on Sunday, and everyone's allowed in, stop in, chat, have some coffee cake, leave. You know what I mean? Or stay and join it's like one of those open things. I just want to catch up with everybody that I know. What did you watch this week? What's funny? What's good? Let's make each other laugh hysterically. And then, by the end of it, I've cooked all my meals for the day and I've connected with my friends. So it's like, that's the social contagion I want. I want such good vibes to be contagious that you just can't resist, because you're allowed to have fun. In case you didn't realize it, if you live in the United States or Europe and you have been online over the past year or 3, you might have forgotten that you're allowed to have fun. And rule number 1 of being a cult leader is I'm allowed to say shit like, I grant everyone watching permission to have fun. You're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to have conversations online about nothing. You're allowed to not join the octagon and maybe have a dinner table kind of chat. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. We need to have more communities like that.
Well, it used to be like I used to say I'm not an activist. And then it kind of dawned on me that I am an activist towards good conversation, right? I'm not a very good atheist activist because I think atheist arguments suck. I'm not really good at being an activist for things where I have to be aggro. But in promoting good conversations, I get to not be aggro and have good conversations about it. That seems to be like the best freak flag to fly.
Yes, I have a hard time being aggressive about the things that I'm activist about. I need to work on that, actually. I need to add a little bit of aggressiveness to my approach. See, my main things that I talk about, surprisingly, trans is like 3rd or 4th trans issues, but it's moving up the poll just because of the social zeitgeist that I'm of that battlefront. But mostly,
and you have a voice, so I mean, you have things to say.
Yeah, I have a voice, and if I don't use it, I feel like I'm letting down the people out there who are dealing with pushback. But environmental stuff is my is one of my flagships in my channel. I always have a section in my show where I try to talk about some environmental issues and some things that we can change socially. I need to be more aggressive about that. pollution, climate change, those sorts of things is the main topic that I do engage in with my activism. The other one is the pushback against for the separation of church and state and sort of
Mm.
my left leaning politics, I guess, which I don't get like political, but I am my channel is designed to be very uh, well, like Creation Watch is mainly about Christians trying to kind of overstep that a little bit. So
Oh yeah. Oh, I
yeah,
dig it. I mean, I love the fact that you're in the cult. You know what I mean? And again, I'm using it tongue in cheek. I don't want to besmirch anybody by saying that they're a cult member or whatever. But regardless of the language, I'm super happy to have you on my server. So I'll make it all neutral. I'm super happy to have you on my server. There it is.
there we go.
Because you
That's what
create
it's all about.
content that fucking matters. Because you are the activist that I'm not. Right. And I get to talk to you. Like I consider myself privileged that I get to have I get to DM you whenever the fuck I want because you're
Yeah.
smart, you're out there, you're in the hangs, you're in the chats, you have something to say, you're saying it well, right? So it's
Yeah,
you have good conversations, you meet the inclusion criteria, Brie. I don't know how to put it differently. You pass the audition.
I won the audition to be in the cult. Yes. So I passed the audition.
It's a high bar.
Yeah. No, there's some amazing people over there, and it's still growing. So absolutely looking forward to the shenanigans that we can get up to over there in the cult. Maute, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do professionally? I know that
Sure.
we probably could have done that at the beginning of the show, but
no, we're keeping
just to
it
give people an idea
chill.
who you are.
Roll with the punches. So my name is Christopher Maute. My full-time job is my go-to saying is I'm just a bass player, right? My second favorite thing to say is just I'm a fuck up from way back. That being said, I am a bass player. My full-time job is I manage a laboratory that studies the psychology of the sense of smell. It is in Philadelphia. It is called the Monell Chemical Senses Center, and I've been there for over 20 years. I'm the laboratory manager for Dr. Pamela Dalton, who is a luminary in the field of olfaction. I also teach over at Rutgers University in the Camden campus. I teach psychology. I teach intro to psych. I teach childhood development, social psychology, human emotions, and psychology of music. And I'm also a dad and a father and a friend and a son and a brother and an uncle. And I think the internet can be used for good. And that's why I do what I do. I make fun of myself. I hijack all the good stuff that's on the internet and eschew the shitty stuff. Keep the drama for your mama. Suck a bag of dicks. Let's just have fun.
Yes, absolutely. And I was introduced to Maute. All his friends call him by his last name. I guess I will too.
Yeah, you can call me Maute, call me Chris, whatever you want. I'll reply to anything almost.
I was introduced through MathPig, but I understand you're also acquaintances of Skylar Fiction, who is another friend of mine in the community.
Indeed. Skylar and I know each other from the old Google Plus Hangout days. That was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, people talk about the before times all the time. I was not there. I was not in Google Plus. I was in forums at that time. I was on. Yes. I was one of the administrators of Carnivora Forum at that time.
Ooh. Yes. Yeah, the Google Plus days were cool just because of the way they were synced with YouTube. You could just do a random Google Hangout, and there was just a page where you could scroll through who was doing a Hangout and just go into it. You know what I mean? It was like the Wild West of like Hangouts and stuff. So it was cool, and it was fun because, like I was younger and I was much more full of piss and vinegar. I was a little bit, I see you, Geo Sam. I was a little bit more of an activist. I was more willing to get into those kinds of discussions. You know what's funny? I've been online for a while, and I've always tried to promote de-escalation. And now that I'm back and I go into some hangout, like I'll go into Robbie's hangouts or whatever, and every once in a while he'll have like an asshole in there on the panel, and uncharacteristically I'll just start fucking screaming at them. Like, I don't know what happened to my impatience over the past whatever years, but it's like when you've heard the same arguments over and over, and you see where it's going, and you see how disingenuous the people are. It's just like, stop, shut up. Like, just, like the old me would be like, oh, really? I'll explain that. Allow me to understand that more. Just talk more. Now it's just like, I don't have time for this.
Already been there. Yeah.
Well,
who was it? The guy that was on Math Pig stream about the
Cade
guy. Cade. Yes.
Man.
Yes, he was.
I'm sorry that you had to see my behavior. I hate behaving like that. I hate that.
Oh, it was interesting. Yeah. Actually, one thing that surprised me about Cade was that he was respectful to my pronouns. I half expected him to come.
Oh yeah, he insulted me way more than he insulted Joe.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You all had, what was the topic of that? It was fatherhood or something, wasn't it?
Traditional families.
Yeah.
I believe.
And I think my main angle of attack was that nuclear families aren't a ancient concept or anything. That was it was kind of a propaganda to get women out of the factories after World War II.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He had no arguments, and that was just like, there came a point where I felt bad, but I mean, I was drinking that night, so I mean, I was having fun too. Yeah. It was just like he came into the Lions Den, like he didn't know when he accepted Robbie's invitation. He didn't know
like what kind of people were going to be there.
Yeah. Like, so when we were asking for evidence, it wasn't his shtick. So of course he's not going to have it. And then Leo is there, and then I'm there, and you're there. Dude, just,
yes, it was Leo asking for evidence that got him all riled up. I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. I still think that, I don't know if Leo's watching, but
yeah,
I still think that if Leo and I had a tag team show, we should just call it I Dare You. And just anyone, I dare you to come in and argue with me and Leo about something that Leo and I agree on. Come in and argue, and then you'll just be shredded. It'll just be a bloodbath.
Yeah, Leo's quite the character. He gets really passionate too. I
dig
it. He's not everybody's cup of tea.
I love his voice too.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I get along with him well, and we're friends. Yeah, when people start screaming at each other, I agree, Sandy. That's things got to be moderated. Things have to be controlled when we have these engagements.
Yes.
I don't like when it becomes a shouting match where no one can make any sense out of what the other person's saying, or the audience can't understand either person, or can't hear either person. That's not conductive. So there does need to be some level of moderation. Yeah. I seem to get a lot of problems with that, with getting people. I can't get people with opposing views to come on like what I got Chris on right now. Generally, they won't come on here with me where I would have control to hit the mute button or whatever. And I always try to get them to go to a platform like Robbie's, like Math Pig's channel, so that
I'm happy to offer if you ever need a neutral moderator, I'm happy to provide the service.
Absolutely. It's been well, and I still have problems getting people to engage with me about too much these days anyway, but hopefully
why is that?
They only want to talk to me about my genitals. I can't engage with somebody who's like fundamentalist Christian, somebody who's evangelical, and
stick on the topic of their religion.
It's going to be like, I'll be like, I know this is just a troll account, but Jesus is Lord. That mofo right there. I came into 420 Atheist, Sammy Jenkins stream, where he was engaging with him and Wildheart about the big the Big Bang, cosmology and stuff, and which is something I happen to know a bit about, not a lot, but a bit. And I went in there to try to engage him about it, and it couldn't be about anything about other than what I'm packing in my pants. So, yeah.
That's
Unfortunately,
ridiculous.
and that's what I get from a lot of people. Sometimes they'll surprise me, though. I spent a good hour and 45 minutes over in Praise I Am's channel.
Okay.
And they were all they were more at each other's throats than anything to do with me, but they were all very polite to me. So it really depends on the environment that you stumble into as well. And I go into some place with people who are with Darth Dawkins, for instance. Darth Dawkins calls me a drag queen and puts tape over my mouth anytime I go into his Discord server or his rooms over there on politics and religion.
Yeah, I mean, and also I don't want to give the wrong impression. I do think there is value in getting into the octagon. I think there is value in sharpening your swords. Like that skill set is fun, and I get it, right? I'm not trying to disparage the debating community, but the debating, when you go to the grocery store, the produce is in the produce section, right? The canned goods are in the canned goods section, right? What I'm offering is just not in the octagon section. It exists, and I think that you should visit it. And people in the cult happily engage in the octagon, but they just know to leave it at the door when they come into my server, right?
Yeah,
and
you don't want that in your space. I get it, definitely.
Yeah, and especially with all the little petty drama that happens online and stuff, it's like, come on, we're adults. And to me, that's worse than anything. Of all the whirlwinds that you can get pulled into online, it's the petty drama stuff. And it's like people haven't figured out that, like, well, I have a very I'm going to sound so horribly condescending right now, and I don't care. There are people who know how to deal with life, and there are people who don't. How you engage online, to my eyes, is a reflection of your, in general, coping and defense mechanisms and what it is that you're looking to get out of interactions. Keeping in mind, the internet is filled with a self-selected group of people. There are people who think they have something to say and think that they should be heard, myself included. Right? I'm here. I'm not othering anybody. I am that group of people. But because of that self-selected group of people, regardless of the topic that you're interested in, it can get really petty really fast. And if you're an adult, you know how to fucking deal with it, you deal with it like an adult. But I don't see a lot of that. So for that reason as well, I want there to be a place where we can just breathe and not have to worry about being taken the wrong way for the purposes of holding something over your head because you're friends with somebody who's friends with somebody who's friends with somebody that said something nasty about my mama, you know?
Yeah. It can be, things can get really toxic if you don't control who you let into your sphere. Yeah, absolutely agree. Or at least how much impact you let them have on your sphere. You can interact with somebody and just in one little facet of your life and keep them completely separate from everything else, especially toxic people.
And there's a lot. Again, because of the self-selected group of people, there's a higher percentage of malignant narcissism going around.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts on the topic for tonight?
Yes. I always like to spin a little positive towards the end. And because I like to talk, in case you can't tell, I'm a fucking lecturer, performer. Give me a break. You're asking me if I have something to say? Hold my beer. So what I would like to say, as it relates to mass psychogenic illness, behavior online, being a human being, which is a social organism, and being able to utilize things like the internet to meet your need for social connection in a healthy way. I think the value of doing hangs like this, where we talk generally about mass psychogenic illness and how easy social contagion variables can influence a group, is a cautionary tale, is as a cautionary tale. Know that you're human. Know that you will get caught up in drama if you allow yourself to be in an environment where drama will be, right? So just like I talk about cognitive biases and heuristics, mental shortcuts, as ways of getting in the way of critical thinking, that doesn't mean that because I know that they exist, that I'm better at avoiding them, right? Just because I can explain to you what a visual illusion is doesn't mean that it's not a visual illusion to me too. Just because I can explain it doesn't mean the illusion part goes away. All of that to say, know which environments bring out the best in you and go into those environments. If those environments don't exist, make them. That's it.
Yes. Community building is very important, especially when you, for people who have stepped away from religion, which is a lot of my followers are people who stepped away from religion. Finding that that to fill that vacuum in your life of a community is so important. And I don't know how people managed this before the advent of social media and all of this, because I don't know how I would have stepped away if I'd been religious, how I would have been able to step away from it or escape it, just the way that it has a control over the community and the social groups that you're part of in certain areas of this country. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Do I
right.
have your permission? Do I have your permission to share an invite to my server
Yeah, absolutely. Drop it in
in the
there.
side chat?
Yeah, absolutely. Join the cult. Leave your lemon bars and your baggage at the door.
Oh, lemon bars. Fucking lemon bars.
It's the lemon and custard is what I understand that the problem is.
Oh God.
What
Lemon
about lemon
curd.
ice cream?
Lemon? No. Lemon Italian ice.
Yeah, that's like frozen lemonade, though.
Yeah. Oh, and lemonade. I can lemonade all day.
Yeah.
All right. I'm putting my Discord server in the side chat for those of you that are interested. Come and check it out. If you don't like it, leave. I will not be offended. If you do like it, stay. Lurk. Take advantage of all the materials that I provide. Engage. It doesn't matter. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Come on
Sunday is
in.
the dinner
Yeah.
table. Yeah.
Yeah. Sunday dinner's on Sunday. And it's early afternoon. See how bad it ain't. I dare you. See how bad it ain't.
All right. Well,
And thank you
you.
so much for inviting me. I was thrilled when you invited me to do a hang. It's been a while since somebody's asked me to be a guest on their hang. I like that.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. I'm glad to get some one-on-one time with you. Every time we've been on a stream together, there's been like 5 or 6 other people with us. So
we're always on a panel of 9 somehow.
yes, absolutely. So yes, check out Chris. His I will add his link down below. I haven't added it yet because I didn't grab it. My bad, but it is in this. It wasn't dropped in the side chat, and I'll drop it again. And the Discord server as well. If you want to go check that out. But please remember to be kind and to take care. And I will see you guys Saturday.